Greetings and salutations, fellow book readers. This is Mark, and the book I will review today is 1,000 Cranes. I am sitting here on this beautiful winter Mediterranean day in this bamboo grove, which kind of goes nice with the book, since it is Japanese, and there are a lot of bamboos in Japan. Anyways, before we continue, this is personalized limited edition of the 1,000 Cranes with leather cover designed and made by me. At the end of the video, I will tell you a couple of ways of how you can get one for yourself, if you are interested. Now let's get back to the review. 1,000 Cranes is a novel written by a Japanese author, Yasunari Kawabata, and published in 1952. Kawabata's novels carry the influence of his tragic youth when he lost all his relatives, including his parents, sister, and grandparents, and it caused the subsequent loneliness and emotional isolation that marked his writings. Kawabata was the first Japanese to win the Nobel in Literature. His younger friend, Yuko Mishima, was previously nominated for it 3 times, but it was Kawabata who won it. Perhaps partly it was this disappointment that contributed to Mishima's decision to commit suicide, and Mishima's suicide might have sparked Kawabata's own arguable suicide. What is 1,000 Cranes about? It is about the connection between life and death and the influence the deceased have on the ones they left behind. When you are held by the dead, you begin to feel that you are not in this world yourself. It is also a story of love, condemned to fail because it was created by the external influences and destructive emotions. Now, a bit of the plot. The plot is interplay between 5 people. The principal character is Kikuji, who is a young man trying to sort through the baggage left by the death of his father. Then Chikako and Mrs. Ota, 2 ex-mistresses of Kikuji's dead father, still affected by the cessation of their relationship with the deceased. Then Fumiko, who is Mrs. Ota's daughter, and lastly Yukiko, a girl with a handkerchief covered by a 1,000 Cranes pattern. The novel is divided into 5 parts, somewhat romantically titled 1,000 Cranes, A Groove in the Evening Sun, Figure Shino, Her Mother's Lipstick, and Double Star. The book begins with Kikuji attending a tea ceremony in a temple hosted by Chikako, who is also the master and the teacher of the ritual. He thinks the reason for the ceremony is to honor his dead father, and it is. But there's also another concealed motive to introduce young girl Yukiko, who is Chikako's student, to Kikuji as a possible bride. At the ceremony, Kikuji also meets Mrs. Ota, who substituted Chikako as his late father's mistress. The dead man is still present in both of their lives, and this prompts them to become lovers and carry on the affair in secret until Mrs. Ota's own tragic circumstances put the end to it. After it, Kikuji is somewhat driven to develop a closer connection with Mrs. Ota's daughter, Fumiko, and they continue to struggle with the relationship between them as the story progresses. And further, Chikako carries on with her own plan to try to convince Kikuji to marry Yukiko, the girl with the 1,000 Cranes handkerchief. And that's the basic plot. What did I think about 1,000 Cranes? The novel has the delicate Kawabata touch, and the words that come to mind when reading it are sad, slow, elegant, poetic, detailed, subtle, calm, melancholic, nostalgic. And because of it, 1,000 Cranes is your typical classic Japanese story with beautiful prose and detailed descriptions where life and death coexist side by side, And suicide is thought of as nothing more than a reasonable solution for temporary problems. There's the air of lingering sadness that never goes away, and the close presence of death and the dead, who continue their psychological existence through family customs and traditions. And in the novel, it is the observance of the ceremonial tea ritual that maintains the bridge or the spiritual connection between life and death. And the personal teacups left by the deceased represent the dead themselves. So a somewhat logical idea to psychologically and emotionally disconnect or even cut oneself from the destructive influence of the past and the ones that are no longer physically present is to smash the teacups they were using while they were alive. In the novel, it is Kikuji's father who had influence and even control over the three people's lives while he was alive, and continues to do so after he is no longer physically present. And this somewhat destructive pattern needs to be broken by having some type of closure in order to be able to move on. And each one of the three, Kikuji, Mrs. Otta, and Chikako, is trying to do that in their own way. To Mrs. Otta and Chikako, Kikuji symbolizes and is seen as an extension of his dead father. And Mrs. Otta, who still misses her old lover, sees her carnal adventure with Kikuji as a continuation of her relationship with his father, and is looking to elevate her pain and further for some type of emotional closure. On the other hand, Chikako, the mistress replaced with Mrs. Otta by Kikuji's father, says, "I am different from Mrs. Otta. As things went with your father, I was a very light case. I see no reason to hide the truth. I was unfortunately not his favorite game. Just when it started, it was over." She never got over being discarded and is still angry about it, and wants some type of poetic revenge on her deceased lover through maybe not controlling, but impacting the destiny or future of his son by convincing him to marry the girl of her choice. And her choice is Yukiko, who is her student, and because of it, she has some control over her. Kikuji, who seems somewhat indecisive and confused as a result of his life being controlled by his father while he was alive, is unable or unwilling to make a choice between Yukiko and Fumiko, and further sees his affair with Mrs. Otta as a physical continuation of his father's affairs, and because she was the closest person to his late father, physically and probably emotionally, she represents a symbolic, perhaps not presence, but continuation to his father, and as close as he can still be to him. Yukiko is transformed by Chikako into an object to be used against Kikuji. The hair seemed luminous. The light was really too bright for a tea cottage, but it made the girl's youth glow. The tea napkin, as became a young girl, was red, and it impressed one less with its softness than with its freshness, as if the girl's hands were bringing a red flower into bloom. And one saw 1,000 cranes, small and white, start up in flight around her. She is beautiful and elegant, just like the tea ceremony, and she's supposed to be a live representation or extension of the handkerchief with 1,000 cranes pattern she wears. The 1,000 cranes patterns are often used in Japanese weddings, and they symbolize happiness, peace, and long life. So Chikako is trying, indirectly or even subconsciously, to make Kikuji connect those feelings with Yukiko. Fumiko, Mrs. Ota's daughter, appears to be there to save Kikuji and help him to free himself from his father's past. He starts a relationship with her, perhaps as a way to extend his previous affair with her mother. But actually she's taking him outside the circle dominated by his father's presence. She's a symbolic rope he can grab to pull himself out of the destructive cycle. Now, even more than evening before, he could think of no one with whom to compare her. She had become absolute, beyond comparison. She had become decision and fate. The story is also about love, a taboo love between the young and the old, and how life is a tragic spectacle, and our roles can and do easily reverse because everything moves and changes. Mrs. Ota, who was the younger lover and was left by her older lover, becomes the older lover and leaves her younger lover. Maybe Kawabata implies that we are nothing more than live marionettes, and there is some type of ever-present universal force or justice that pulls our strings and has control over our lives. I think Shakespeare said it best in his play, As You Like It, when he wrote, "The whole world is a stage, and all the men and women merely players." To sum it up, Thousand Cranes is a highly symbolic novel that deals with loss, grief, guilt, and shame. It is about coming to terms when the person one is used to, the physical presence of, is no longer present, and also the need to let go of the dead by substituting them with the living. So one can cut himself from the past and move on. Because if you don't, your own end might be tragic. The book is also about the sins of parents, specifically fathers, and their lasting effect on our lives, and the necessity to liberate oneself from it. And the Kawabata's use of tea ceremony as a connection between life and death is no coincidence, since Buddhists consider tea a beverage of spiritual inspiration, and the whole tea ritual has been deeply influenced by Zen Buddhism. There is a book titled The Book of Tea by Okakura Kakuzo, which beautifully explains the meaning, theories, and practices of the ceremony. The philosophy of tea is not mere aestheticism in the ordinary acceptance of the term, for it expresses conjointly with ethics and religion our whole point of view about man and nature. Further, Kawabata draws the contrast between the beauty of tradition and loyalty, such as practicing the tea ceremony to connect with the dead, and the beautiful way it is performed by Yukiko, and on the other hand, the ugliness of human behavior spurred by basic wants when Chikako uses the very same tea ritual as a tool of manipulation and revenge, which is made even more hideous by the fact that she is the teacher of the ceremony and should have more respect for it by not allowing her negative emotions to soil it. As with most Japanese classics, Thousand Cranes is not plot-driven, but rather focuses on the form and expression. Kawabata has a certain minimalist approach toward writing, so if you are looking for intense action, this will not do it. But the book makes for somewhat sad and at the same time enjoyable and relaxing reading before bedtime. There are a couple of Japanese adaptations of the book from 1953 and 1969, but I couldn't find them anywhere. In general, Japanese adaptations are excellent, so I assume these two are as well. Okay, let's talk about the physical book. The book I am holding is a paperback which I transformed into hardcover leather-bound edition. To make the cover, I use grade A, naturally tan hide I buy from a tannery in North Spain. It is the same leather Louis Vuitton uses to make his bags, so it is top quality. I do all the processing of the leather myself. First, I designed the cover, which, what I did here, I found this beautiful woodblock print of a woman preparing tea in the winter garden by the great 19th century Japanese artist Tsukioka Yoshitoshi. And I thought it reflected nicely the nature of the book, so I added the title and the author's name and transferred it onto the leather and made the cover with it. And this is the back of the book with the descriptive blurb. And further, I added a quote from the book to the inside of the cover. If you want to see a more detailed video where I explain how I transform paperback into leather-bound hardcover, click on the link in the description. I will make a maximum of 100 editions of each title. Each one will be numbered and initialed, and the numbers will go in chronological order from 2 up, since number 1 stays with me. The price will be around $100, so if you would like me to make one for you, you can click below on my email and send me a message. I do not guarantee I will do it, since it will depend on the time I have available, access to leather, and if I can get my hands on the copy of the book. Now, if you're not willing to spend the $100 but you still want the book, what you can do is click below on the PayPal link and donate $3 or more to my channel. And for every 100 donations, I will make a lottery and draw one name. And the winner will receive the book. So, if you are cheap but feel lucky, this might be the way to do it. Also, your donations give me the extra motivation to make the book reviews, and I appreciate them very much, so thank you in advance. One more thing, when you make your donation, remember to include the title of the book you would like to win. The book itself is beautiful. It has very nice texture, it smells great, and the more you handle it, the more beautiful it will become. And it makes a great gift for yourself or somebody who appreciates books. So, if you want one, don't snooze or you might lose. Well, that's it, so let's end it here, and until next time, keep your ear close to the ground and read a book. Adios.